When I started in 2014, we were in 35 cities. And the concept of getting into a stranger's car, before I interviewed there, I tried the product, and it was a strange experience, and most people had not tried it. So I was very surprised by the uptake in business and the enthusiasm for the product. I think there was a lot of great use cases. Even at one point, like 1 year in, my dad, who lives in the suburbs in Pittsburgh, he was 72 at the time. And he called me to say, I had some vertigo and I didn't feel comfortable driving, so I just called an Uber to take me to the grocery store. And I was like, wow, we have made it.
You really helped with Uber kind of condition the market, educate the public, and that ramp up time, even though it wasn't that long, it did take some time for ridership to really jump in. Joe, maybe talk a little bit about your experience bringing Lime to Austin and San Antonio, maybe reflecting on the growth, some ridership metrics. Some people might not be familiar with how substantial that's been, but maybe you could talk a little bit about how the ridership has fared and the numbers you've seen.
Right, yeah, we're actually just coming up on a year in Austin, and we've already done over 2 million rides, just Lime, in the city of Austin. And so, this is one of the things that we like to talk about, is just how many different people are coming into sort of the funnel of active transportation through scooters. It's not just your typical early adopter app download, user. About 25% of the riders are over the age of 35, so it's not just young people. About 50% of the riders are making less than $70,000 a year. When we have underdeveloped transit like we do in the city of Austin, it becomes a real tool for a lot of people. And so, that's one of the cool and most exciting things, I think, about scooters, and really just why the growth has been so explosive.
Even though Bird and Lime might be rivals of sorts, you're both in the position where you're trying to grow the business, educate people in a similar way. And so what have you seen?
We've seen really amazing adoption. I mean, the adoption of the product has been incredible. As cities have begun to see this adoption, they have embraced it. They see the numbers. I mean, the numbers don't lie.
If there's one thing that you have to work with the city government on, or with the public at large, what's that issue that is kind of the sticking point, you think?
Really getting that education about where to ride e-scooters and where and how they should be parked is really the biggest challenge.
What were the biggest challenges that you had to face on that government side? Was it the workers? Was it the employment issue?
So it's a bit of a complicated space, like many things when you're starting, right? And so that was a lot of the initial hurdle, was how do we formalize this service in a way that is respectful of the state's right and necessity to regulate things, while also respecting that we're not a taxi company, and it kind of looks, some pieces overlap, some don't. I think in today's world, the challenges on the city level tend to be that cities have a lot of different constituents, and they're looking for a piece of some revenue generating to help with enforcement. There's a lot of ways for people to kind of feel like a participant, and some of that's monetary, and I think that's some of the challenges today. But I think the general thesis is start with a core product, move to profitability, then start with other products, and as they become more mature, they become profitable.
Just talk about the addressable market, who your riders are, what the role of scooters are.
We surveyed 700 riders, and the feedback we got was that 40% of every ride that's taken replaced a car trip, and that's just direct feedback from our riders. If you take your car even into downtown Austin, you may have 4, 5, 6 restaurants you go to during the week because they're 2 or 3 blocks away. Now all of a sudden you can get on a scooter and go a mile away and get back in time on your lunch break, and you discover a new place. And so there's a lot of opportunity here and to fill that gap of the last mile. And we see that a huge partnership opportunities with public transit agencies in the city to help address that, reduce congestion.
Is Bird in particular a tech company, or is it a scooter company?
Well, we're a transportation company that is enabled by technology. So as cities are able to look at the data that we provide them, and some of the technology that we've provided even on the enforcement side, they're able to streamline some of their operations. We've also partnered with transit agencies in order to share data with them, and that has helped them to time their frequency on their routes.
What's the future look like, and how investable do you think it is?
The really interesting investment theses are maybe one derivative over from ride sharing or scooters. You know, the more traditional autonomous scooter ride sharing theses are pretty well trodden. I don't know that there's the kind of opportunity today to realize the kind of investment that you might have realized by getting in at a much earlier and smaller valuation. The interesting plays are a little bit more on the unknown. So what does, there's a lot of arguments about autonomous, you know, does that mean more traffic or less traffic? Does that mean we reclaim our city parks because of less parking, or we move out to the suburbs because now the commute's no problem? But I look at a little bit more of those next derivative businesses.
Maybe I'll ask one more question, then we'll open it up for Q&A. Talk a little bit about the theme of social responsibility.
Almost every big company now has an office of sustainability or some role around sustainability, and I think that's really incredibly important. I think even to consumers now, it really matters a lot when they're making choices. So I think that we have to look at the impact that we have as a company, and you know, part of that is infrastructure and you know, the right of way, public right of way. So you know, what are we doing to enhance the experience of pedestrians and to respect our non-riders as well as our riders? You know, it's a really big part of the business, and so we're developing technology that's, you know, basically like sidewalk detection technology, so that when a rider is on the scooter, they, you know, can get a notification if they're on a sidewalk and they're not supposed to be. There are places where scooters don't belong, and it's our responsibility to use our technology to make sure our riders are aware of that, and that we respect sort of the greater community of non-riders as well as riders.
We are really focused on making cities, like I said, a more livable places by getting rid of cars and congestion. Imagine a city where you're not dealing with traffic or parking, or even the dangers posed to you by cars as you're walking down the street, right? So I think this is what is still to be determined, and that is a benefit to the entire community.
And it's a lot about how do you grow your business to a city's liking. So there's lots of benefits to some of these services. And so we spend a lot of time with cities and airports thinking and listening to what they want and where they want their focus to be. And even though politicians can be annoying in that regard, you know, they are the stewards of the public welfare. And so there's a lot of productive ways to partner, and I think some of the more visible ones are the lack of infrastructure investment and the lack of transportation. So many cities are facing shortages in funding when they think about expanding their bus lines or their metro lines, and they do want to solve some of the equity problems that transportation, quite frankly, highlights in today's world. And so it's thinking about how do you plug in some of that private capital to right some of those problems.